In the archives of the Tate Britain Museum in London is this painting. It's by the British artist Ford Madox Brown. It was completed in 1856 and it's titled Christ Washing Peter's Feet. The painting is far from perfect. The table and teacups in the background are way too contemporary. Jesus is way too Anglo-Saxon, and Peter is way too old. But there is a beauty and a grace to this work that makes it weighty. We see it in the Apostle Peter. He can scarcely contain himself. His head is bowed, his brow is furrowed, and his hands are gripped tightly in a posture of prayer. To the right of Peter is a young disciple in red, perhaps the Apostle John. His neck is craned and his mouth is gaped open in disbelief. To the left of Peter, we see the other disciples, and they're a mess. One man bites his hands in anguish. The disciple next to him cradles his head as tears fill his eyes. The others are similarly in postures of distress and despondency as they seek to make sense of the scene before them. There is, however, one exception. It's the man on the far left, the one taking off his sandals. Unlike the others, he seems unruffled and composed. At first, we wonder who this may be, but the artist then gives us a clue. The clue is the money bag on the table in front of him. Unlike the other disciples, Ford Madox Brown shows Judas Iscariot as one who is a bit too eager to take off his sandals so the Lord of the universe might serve him by scrubbing his feet. Foot washing was an everyday practice in the ancient world. Because of the wearing of sandals and the dustiness of a dry climate, it was common upon entering a home to have one's feet washed. It was an act of courtesy. It was an act of hospitality. It was also clearly understood to be a menial act reserved only for servants. But on this Passover night in that upper room, there was no servant to be found. And from all the evidence before us, no one was volunteering. I imagine if asked, any of the disciples would have been more than willing to wash Jesus' feet. After all, he is Jesus. But there's no way any of the 12 would have ever volunteered to wash the feet of a fellow disciple in that room. After all, these were men who made it their regular practice to argue over which one of them was the greatest. But here's Jesus breaking expectations and shattering protocol by offering a teaching not through a sermon or a parable that was spoken, but through a sermon and a parable that was acted. The washing of the disciples' feet fell on the eve of Christ's greatest trial, his crucifixion and his death, through which the redemption of those who believe is procured. He knows he's going to die, and on this night of all nights, no one would have ever blamed Jesus for seeking emotional and spiritual support from those closest to him. And yet, the amazing thing about this night is that he's the one who encourages. He's the one who gives comfort. He's the one who offers support. He's the one who washes their feet. And after doing so, he tells them, and through them he tells us to do the same. Brothers and sisters of Tampa Covenant Church, we wish you a blessed and thoughtful Maundy Thursday as we meditate upon our Lord and as we meditate upon his calling for our lives.